Hi, team. So we had 3 readings this week that Justin and I are going to discuss, and we'll have an open discussion, and then we'll toss it back to Yellow Dig for continuing questions.
I think this kind of gets into one of the big overarching situations that we need to deal with when it comes to ethics and privacy is there's really not a lot of really great rules in the United States right now for how that data is to be handled, how it's to be made secure. Even if it was acquired by the government, is there public access to it? Um, could you acquire that information by doing a Freedom of Information Act request? So I think one of at least moving on to takeaways, my biggest takeaway from our readings is that we have a long way to go to be able to make sure that there's some public trust in big data. I think the more that we look into it, the more we realize we're giving out more data than we realize. The European Union, and the European Union is not to be modeled for everything, but the European Union has um, they have put together the General Data Protection Regulation. And they established this General Data Protection Regulation across all of the European Union, and it is very, very sound in what people can collect data for, what they can use data for, how they're supposed to secure it so that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. They've established really strict penalties for the misuse of the data or for data breaches. They can fine somebody up to 20 million euros or 4% of their annual global turnover. And so it is huge. When we get back to something like the eye in the sky, a lot of these residents are concerned about what their data is going to happen, what's going to happen to their data. You see messages in stores that there's a camera may be watching you, or video surveillance is in effect. You might get a phone call that says this is being recorded for quality assurance or whatever it is going to be. But there's not a lot of information that says that the video and your voice from phone calls or whatever it's going to be isn't being tied back to other data that organization may already have about you, and what they're doing with that data to try to either manipulate messages or deliver sales or what's going on with that. I don't think people are ready to have all of that out there yet. So passing it over to you, what is your big takeaway from the readings we did this week?
I think that the collectors of this information should be very conscientious in how they're collecting it and how they're using it. Going back to the example from the teacher, it should be very important that we talk about what this means. So it's not the only element that's used to make a decision on someone's employment.
Absolutely.
Knowing that there could be biases and there could be flawed approaches. I think it's important that we continue to revisit our use of the data. And so if they do find there's inherent biases or there's inherent flaws, we should be monitoring that and then making adjustments as needed if they find that to be the case. I think it's also important in the case of the individuals that were using this for election advertising. A lot of companies put in their disclosures that they may share your information with third parties, and they often say may. Perhaps they should say they will, and then they should say how they will share it and how they will use that information and with whom they will share it. And so you sign away your rights when you allow them to do that, but they don't often go into detail. And so you might not know what that means. You might just think that that means you're going to get more mailers, you're going to get more information via snail mail, but that's not really the case anymore. And I think we should do more to better disclose how that information will be used.
Great. Any last takeaways before we sign off?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our discussion.